We're in Psalm chapter 7. David is being slandered, and he's running from Saul, most likely, and he is responding to that slander by putting his trust in God. Have you ever been the victim of injustice? Well, David did not see himself as a victim, even though he was, by our standards, by our definitions. He wouldn't let the victim definition stick to him. No, he turns around in this psalm and says, no, I'm the child of God. I am righteous in God's sight. I belong to God. I'm going to trust him. He's going to hear my prayer. He's going to respond to my situation. We saw yesterday, verse 10, my defense is of God. Doesn't sound like a victim to me, does it? I mean, it sounds like someone that needs defense and a defender, but it sounds like someone who is seeing his injustice as an opportunity to get to know his God better, an opportunity to see his God glorified, an opportunity to see his God come forward and step forward and rise up on his behalf, an opportunity for God to be magnified to others. And I don't know if you've ever thought about that injustice happening to you. Not that the system shouldn't do its work. We've talked about that in recent days, but sometimes the system fails or the system doesn't work for you. Or in this case, the system turned against David, even though he was innocent. It was dealing with him as though he had committed crimes, and he hadn't. And so David turns to God and says, my defense is of God. I'm not a victim. I belong to God. He's got me. He's got this. He's going to save the upright in heart. Now look at verse 11. God judgeth the righteous, and God is angry with the wicked every day. Now, this sounds like a strong verse, but this is a wonderful verse. It's an awesome verse, okay? Let's take the first two pieces of the verse. God judgeth the righteous, okay? The word judge we think of primarily in a negative context, but think of this. When you have been victimized, when you've been the recipient of injustice, especially criminal injustice, and you're going before a judge, what is the judge's job? The judge is his job, his responsibility is to punish evil and protect innocence. His job is to advocate for right and truth. The whole idea of a judge is to be just, that he is to rule fairly and justly. And so when you're innocent like David is, the idea of being judged is a good thing. Now, when you're guilty, the idea of being judged is a negative thing. And we think of that through that negative lens, and we think of God in terms of judgment as judgment being bad. But have you ever thought of this? God's judgment is good too, okay? And especially in an Old Testament Hebrew context, the word judge, the idea of a good judge, was much more of a foreign concept and therefore much more of a treasured or a cherished concept. Why? Well, think of a widow who had no children and no husband. That was the most destitute a person could be. In poverty, an older woman with no one to take care of her, no family. That woman was typically a beggar in ancient Israel, okay? And when a widow in that situation needed help or had been the recipient of injustice, what she needed was a good judge. She needed an honest, a fair, she needed an advocate who would stand before her. And so the idea of a judge that would help, that would lean into and bless and see with eyes of compassion a widow, that is the picture of a good or a just judge. And it was easy in ancient times to buy off a judge. Corruption was rampant. It was easy for the system to be played and for the system to go against those that were in the right. And so all the more the promise that God would be a good judge, the promise that God would be a just judge and a fair judge, and that nobody who trusted in the Lord was without a good advocate, a good judge. That's what this idea is in verse 11. David is celebrating that God, the word judge here is literally to defend or to vindicate or to argue on behalf, okay? So it's almost the idea of a defense attorney, that God is an advocate for the righteous. But look at the back half of the verse. And God is angry with the wicked every day. Now you'll see the words with the wicked are in parenthesis. Okay? What does that even mean? Well, when you're reading the King James Bible and you see words that are in parentheses, these are words that are not technically in the Hebrew text, but they are in the context. They are in the sense, okay? But it's not inappropriate to read the verse, God judges the righteous, and God is angry every day. Now, why would they add with the wicked every day? Because otherwise, the Hebrew sense, the context, gets a little muddy. Why? Because you could read it that God judges the righteous and he's angry with the righteous every day. In our modern English context, that's certainly how we'd probably read it, okay? Or that he's only angry every day, okay? But the actual sense of the verse is, no, he's an advocate for the righteous and he's a judge against wickedness every day. We've already talked about God's anger. God's anger is a good thing. It's a part of his love. It's two sides of one coin. He's always justly angry and justly loving. And so his anger is a quality of his character, which is why every day, it's not up and down. He's constantly, continually dealing in the same posture towards wickedness and the same posture towards the righteous. Okay? So God's character is consistent. He's a just representative, a holy, just, loving, righteous defender and advocate and deliverer for those who trust him. And in this verse, they're called the righteous. And he is angry. He is a force to be reckoned with. He is a triumphant executor of justice with those who choose to distrust him, with the wicked, okay? The righteous are those that have been declared righteous by God. The wicked are those that have forsaken and rejected his solution for sin, his salvation. And justice is coming from God to them, and he is his posture never changes. He's not emotional. He's predictable. He's the same. He is steadfast. He is always, always right and there for you in your time of distress. Well, I think that's a good place to leave it for today. That is enough for today. My friend, God is a just judge. He is on your side. So be thankful today. Be glad that he is your representative. Celebrate the fact that he goes through this day with you. You're not the victim. You're not the victim of planet Earth or injustice. You are the protected child of God. He is your defender and your deliverer and your just judge, your advocate. Happy Tuesday. See you tomorrow.